Today, we are going to be looking at the Practice Educator Professional Standards with BASW member Jenni Burton, who is Vice Chair of our Professional Capabilities and Development Group, and also a key member of a subgroup in relation to the Practice Educator Professional Standards, or PEPS for short. You'll hear us refer to the acronym PEPS throughout this. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Jenni. Hello.
Hello, Wayne. Hi.
So, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, Jenni, I think that'll be really useful for our audience, and then we can get into the presentation.
Yes, certainly. I'm Jenni Burton. I'm involved in BASW in a range of different ways, but mainly as a member of one of the thematic groups, working groups that BASW have under their umbrella. And this is the thematic group that look at professional capabilities and development. So really anything about quality standards that underpin social work practice. I'm also an independent practice educator and I'm a mentor and assessor for the PEPS programme. And prior to that, I was a full-time academic at a university, running a social work course and running the practice learning programmes. And then prior to that, I was a team manager, primarily working with adults with learning disabilities. So quite an eclectic range of different roles, and I enjoy working with different universities now on a part-time basis, do some external examining, etc. So, yes, for today, I'm going to be talking about my role with BASW. Before this, the first thing that I was involved in in the thematic group was the PCF refresh, which is the Professional Capability Framework refresh. That was the first thing I did within the thematic group. And then the Practice Education Professional Standards, the PEPS, and more recently the Quality Assurance for Practice Learning. The PEPS was initially developed by the College of Social Work. But there were a couple of years where no one was really taking overall responsibility for it. And when the college closed, it was sort of really left unhosted. So in 2017, it was taken over by BASW. And we decided that we needed to refresh the PEPS. The first thing that we did really is we wanted to really get a wide snapshot of what people felt about the PEPS programs that were running across the country, and it was a large survey. It was BASW members and non-members, and a range of different stakeholders, including JSWEC and NOPT, National Organisation for Practice Teachers. And we found some quite interesting points where some of the findings were highlighted, which were most people did actually really value the PEPS and the importance of a national framework for applying theories, values and knowledge to the social work practice education. But there was a need for national standards for quality assurance and some maintenance and development of the actual standards themselves. The 4 domains underpinning the PEPS training needed review, they needed updating to bring them in line with contemporary social work practice, and also in line at the time with KSS and the Professional Capability Framework. It was also recognised that practice educators need more recognition and support from employers, and that's a focus that we've continued to work on within the thematic groups. Variation in how PEPS were being delivered, so there was quite a different range of courses that were being run across the country, some in more depth than others, and we felt that there needed to be more uniformity really, and some sort of best practice principles and minimum standards for training and support. We felt that the PEPS profile needed to be raised again, and we needed sort of better resources and publicity to embed with the CPD and social work career progression planning. and also increased guidance on what could be included within the PEPS practice curriculum. So in the next slide, please, we'll see, this is just a brief overview of some of the main points of the engagement process. And I guess the main thing to stress here is that there was a lot of support nationally. There was a lot of collaboration with NOPT, with JSWEC, Skills for Care, teaching partnerships, and we also engaged with 10 different universities as part of this process. And it's been recognised really that support for practice educators is quite patchy, and that they need to start their journey while undergoing the PEPS with a very strong infrastructure of support. Moreover, PEPS is now well established as a post-qualifying route for social workers, and it's a vital way to retain and develop staff. So we wanted to get it, as right as we could. So following the survey, it was agreed that we needed to actually draft out a first draft of the refresh and to update that as a document. And we tried to capture as much of the feedback from the survey as we could. We held a couple of webinars which were on the BASW platform, and we had 31 different contributors for that. And that was really useful to actually focus in on the important things that we wanted to capture. Sort of areas like qualification, currency, the role of the practice educator, mentor and assessor came out as very important. And some of the key points that were raised by the webinar were that we needed a standard approach, we needed more guidance on how to support and enable the process of failing a student well, which was something that came up quite a bit. The guidance on addressing practice educator performance, if there are any sort of issues that needed to be raised, how should that be done effectively? Things like difficulties in matching up the number of social workers coming forward for PEPS with the number of students on placement, because obviously the two really are sort of, there has to be a match there, and sometimes there isn't. And also the moving on, the transition from PEPS stage 1 to PEPS stage 2, what are the gaps and how are we going to meet them most effectively? So the national stakeholders groups also, which we set up further along the engagement process, they gave us a chance to discuss more broadly some of the key points that were being raised, with Social Work England, the Department of Education and Health, and NOPT. So we had various meetings, national strategy group meetings. A survey was held on the first draft, which again agreed the principles of the policy, but we still had some more to iron out in terms of the terminology and the actual details for the process. But overall, the feedback from all the consultation chimed really well with the initial survey and reflected a real commitment and agreement to the values and domains that we wanted to include within the refreshed PEPS. The next slide just looks at the values and domains themselves. The PEPS values have synergy with the BASW Code of Ethics for Social Work, which have been refreshed this year, this July 2021. And they also align well with the PCF, particularly the purpose, the super domain, which encompasses ethics and values, diversity and equality, and rights and justice. And the values and domains have been brought forward in the guidance as the most important and valued part of the new standards document. And also they stress the importance of working with people with lived experience of social work. That's sort of quite a key area that we've emphasised there. And the impact on the learning for both the student and the practice educator trainee of actually working directly with people with lived experience. So although not changing the essence, we have also sought to make the domains themselves more concise. One of the big changes between the previous PEPS and the refreshed was that we felt it was important that PEPS trainees work through all 4 domains throughout both stage 1 and stage 2, rather than leaving some back for the second stage. And that seemed to work much better in terms of continual professional development and just sort of building and working on the domains as the trainee progressed through the 2 stages. Also, the domains focus on the right, really, and the need for training practice educators to have access to good information and sort of reliable resources for their own professional development. We've also worked with Social Work England to look at their placement practice guidance and professional standards to sort of try to keep on a par with the new standards there. Social Work England have endorsed PEPS and refer to this as the underpinning standard for social work training to be practice educators. So the next slide is really a little bit about the language. We're really stating that this is a best practice guidance document for practice educators and all partners. So it's important that we use, we're clear about the language that we use. So we have included quite an in-depth glossary at the beginning, just to sort of be sure about the different roles and responsibilities of all the different people that are involved in the practice education process. Also, we've looked at, just sort of language like trying to keep it on a par with Social Work England and the way that we're moving towards recognising co-production, and the importance of working very closely and collaborating with people with lived experience of social work, so that we're providing a consistent message there. So this is around clearer expectations, really, for PEPS trainees that we've tried to cover. We've sort of stressed the fact that applicants should have at least 2 years post-qualifying experience and be practicing at experienced social work level before starting the course. There should be a selection process for PEPS courses. We're not saying that there must be an interview, but I think it's very important that the people come into the course with sort of, good information, so that they've got their eyes open to the fact that it is, quite an intense experience, and it means supporting and assessing a student from the beginning to the end of the placement. Things like that, sometimes somebody may not be fully aware of the sort of commitment to that. And also, because of the fact, and it's a good thing, that PEPS is seen as such a strong incentive, really, for people to continue within their social work career and to be offered the training as part of their post-qualifying process. Sometimes it could be that people are looking at it, from a promotional aspect, rather than the fact that, as I say before, there does need to be a commitment, and employers need to really take responsibility for, reinforcing that. I think another thing that we did sort of clarify, and later we did slightly revise this, because it is important that during the process of undergoing PEPS 1 and PEPS 2, that trainees do assess 2 students. For some HEIs that do quite a lot of work with post-qualifying students, that could be difficult, so we did actually open that up to at least 1 student and 1 other learner who could be a post-qualifying learner. Clearer expectations for organisations. Again, we have provided sort of more emphasis there on the need for organisational responsibility, both from the universities and also from employers, on the support of new practice educators. And we've actually continued to do some work within the PC&D thematic group on looking at sort of raising the profile of practice education. and the real importance of providing enough support for them within their career. And this has included new guidance, which is actually being worked on at the moment, that's going to be shared with employers and also with principal social workers. And we're going to be covering that a little bit later on. Also, we've given some guidance on the curriculum, so it gives a picture of what a PE course could consist of and the different subjects that could be covered. This is advisory and may not refer to forms of direct teaching, but will suggest ways for PEPS learners to assess and observe students. We do suggest, or we recommend, that the PEPS Refresh, it's a post-qualifying course, and so it should be taught at the postgraduate level 7. Similarly, more guidance is given on who should be a practice educator mentor and assessor, and the post-qualifying experience that they would need to have. Finally, for those who've not been able to continually supervise students following their PEPS qualification, we've actually looked at different ways that practice educators can maintain their currency, and I think that's really important, because we need to keep practice educators practicing, so we need to be looking in creative ways at how people can sustain their currency in lots of different ways by supporting within the organisation. So we've given sort of some different suggestions on how that can work. So the Refresh PEPS guidance was published in July 2019, but it wasn't fully implemented until September 2020. What we decided to do was to pilot the Refresh PEPS with a small number of early implementers in September 2019. That actually worked out to be very effective, because we got some really good early feedback from them. And some of the points and some of the areas that we actually did take on board was the need for a frequently asked questions document to be circulated and put onto the website, because almost as soon as we'd completed the refresh, we were having a lot of queries and lots of interest that were provoking other questions. And so, because it's a living and breathing document, we wanted to make sure that we captured sort of these ongoing points that we're receiving. So this was also published in 2020, but a few months after the publication of the actual PEPS document. Some of the other points that came out from having the early implementers pilot was the need for further work to be done, because it really addressed the point that we did need to have a review of the quality assurance of practice learning, because that's, again, was something that hasn't been done for a while, and it needed to be brought up to date. And as I mentioned before, to actually sort of really look at how we can support practice educators. And the need to sort of build up the BASW website so that we actually had a section on there for practice educators. And we have been able to do that over the last 12 months, really. We also set up a really helpful support group for practice educators and employers and universities on a WhatsApp website, and that was actively used, particularly over the early months of the pandemic, when practice learning was changing so rapidly, and we really needed to be looking across different universities at practice and how we could actually overcome some of the different blocks and barriers that we were experiencing. And also the importance of promoting the PEPS Refresh. So we did that. Different members attended different conferences, to promote the work we were doing over the summer of 2020, both prior to and during the launch. We've also identified that there is a need for more support, not only for practice educators, but also for on-site supervisors who are supporting students within different organisations, and also more support and resources for the mentors and assessors that are supporting practice educators through the PEPS process. So they, you know, as we do work, there are other avenues open up where we need to be carrying on looking at different aspects of work. Next steps achieved for PEPS and practice educators. Additional queries have been included in the frequently asked questions document. They've been raised on a regular basis and responded to individually by the PEPS working group. We've also set up a BASW web page for PEPS and practice educators, and that's being continually added to. Information resources and articles have been set up. There's actually a blog on there that I wrote a few months ago from the perspective of an independent practice educator and a mentor, sort of using the PEPS Refresh for the first time during the pandemic, and sort of what some of the benefits I found, you know, for having more sort of support and more resources within the refresh. We've also done quite a lot of engaging with social work forums and partnerships to raise awareness of the PEPS document, and we ran various conferences over the summer once it was actually launched. Also stemming from the PEPS review are two subgroups looking after practice educators, and also a review of the quality assurance for practice learning. So the next slide says a little bit more about looking after practice educators. So but really that was about, as I said before, raising the profile of practice educators and ways to recognise and celebrate their skills and wide areas of expertise. Some of the things that have actually, some of the points or the impetus for the work coming out was the need for thresholds of good practice, recognition of the changing face of practice education with the new social work programmes such as the apprenticeship route, new requirements for Social Work England for universities to increase support for practice educators, and the impact really of the pandemic, increasing demands for practice educators to be flexible, skilled and involved in the consolidation and development of practice education for students, as well as ASYE and more senior social work levels. And really in the importance of employers taking ownership of the need to be seen as learning environments with more open and transparent measures in place to link with universities and support students effectively. So the next slide actually, this is a piece of initial work that the group have done, and it has some of the sort of the main points there that they've been working on. I think they're at the stage now where they're drafting up the final advice or guidance for employers and also for principal social workers. So that work is well underway. Work that we've been doing really that has stemmed from the PEPS refresh is the quality assurance of practice learning. And again, that we felt that we needed to look at, to address the need for a refresh of the current guidance and resources in line with Social Work England professional standards. We've worked really closely actually with people with lived experience to review the QAPL, and that's been a really interesting part of it, because we've worked with York and Kent University to ensure that people with lived experience have been able to review some of the different documents and provide you know, their feedback, and that's been very much part of the process. The actual refreshed QAPL, which the content of it is an overall guidance document with 10 different templates, which actually map the journey of practice learning from, you know, the very beginning of auditing placements through to the quality assurance process. We're almost at the end of the consultation process with that. We've got our final draft, and the actual launch will be taking place by the end of September 2021. The actual PEPS refresh, we aim to carry out a review by September 2021, but because of the the COVID pandemic and constraints with time and resources, we've had to delay that. So that's going to be put back to September 2022. But there will be a statement that's coming out soon, really just to reinforce our intent, because these sorts of documents, they do need to be continually reviewed and updated. We're still to this day having queries that come through, different points of view that we need to be considering. So that review is needed. We continue to promote PEPS. We're working closely with Social Work England to establish national standards for monitoring the quality assurance of practice learning, and working closely with stakeholders to review what we're doing, and really the central positioning of practice educators as vital for practice learning. So this is really sort of a journey that's ongoing. It's been really rewarding to be part of the PEPS refresh, and I'm really pleased to see that we're continuing really with work around practice education, to keep on raising the standards really for this really important part of social work practice. So that's the end of the presentation. I hope you've got something from it. There is information on the BASW website. The guidance document itself will be on there, as well as the frequently asked questions document, the blog that I mentioned earlier, and I think there's some other bits and pieces there that you might find interesting.
Thank you very much, Jenny. I'm sure that people will have got lots from that. I'm really pleased we were able to utilise your expertise in this presentation. I'd like to just ask you a couple of questions, if you don't mind, just to close the presentation. Obviously, you've been a member of the Professional Capabilities and Development Group for a number of years now, but also a proactive member of BASW for a long time as well. I just wondered what the benefits have been for you really over the years, and what you've got from that personally and professionally.
Well, I think, for me, particularly as I was sort of wanting to come to the end of my full-time social work career, I really wanted something, that I could own that would keep me up to date as well in terms of my own continual professional development. So being invited onto the Professional Capability Development Group was just what I needed. It's kept me really right up to date with everything to do with practice education and wider standards. It's given me a group of colleagues to work with, and it's just really sort of kept me interested and refreshed on the currency, and it's really important to keep abreast of everything. Mm-hmm. And I think from that, I've also been able to get involved in the voluntary coaching that BASW provides for social workers, and just being aware of the conferences and all the different courses as well, that BASW provides. So it's a real lifeline actually for me. And I'm actually, I really do enjoy, I'm not just saying, I do genuinely enjoy, the work that I do with BASW. It's really important for me.
That's really nice to hear. And I'm going to stop sharing the presentation now, just so we can get a good look at you before we finish the session. And I'm really pleased to hear what you were saying then about the various benefits really that you've got from BASW over the years, and most recently via the professional support service as a volunteer coach, as you were saying. So that's fabulous. Okay, and in terms of the Professional Capabilities and Development Group specifically, what would you say are the main or the key benefits of being part of that group? What has that enabled you to be part of? What opportunities have arisen? And I'm thinking really of people who've maybe considered it, not quite known what it was. What sort of activities would you say have been the real highlights for you?
Well, I think really for me, it's been, you know, because it's been so proactive in terms of the range of different works I've been involved in, you know, initially with the Professional Capability Framework refresh, and then the PEPS refresh, and now the quality assurance in practice learning. And I think that opens other doors as well, you know, to be sort of invited, you know, to take part in different conferences and, you know, to be asked to write different articles and blogs. So it you know, it just broadens the horizon, and it's you know, it's just, I think it's, for me, it's been very healthy, and also it means that I can put some of my sort of background experience into useful practice. It's not wasted. It's, you know, it's, I'm able to sort of make it more current and keep on learning, really. I think one of the big things as well is the CPD. Obviously, there's big emphasis on all of us to keep that up to date with Social Work England, and I haven't been short of topics at all. You know, and a lot of that has come from the Professional Capability and Development Group. So that's been great personally for me, as for my, you know, professional development, keeping on top of all that.
Perfect. That's great. Thanks ever so much for your presentation, Jenny. We really appreciate it, and all the hard work that you contribute to BASW now and over the years. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Wayne.